Hello, today I thought I would show you the Nalbinding books I have collected. I've recently received 3 of these, so I'm quite excited. This is the first book that I bought myself. I learnt my first basic stitch on YouTube, and I've learnt most of my stitches online from YouTube or Nola Kintat. I'll link that below. But this has some patterns that you can follow in like real life size, as well as like really like bit by bit instructions. And whenever I forget something, I can look it up here. The pictures are color pictures, which I find really useful. There's a little bit of history at the start. This book is called With a Needle in English, and it is currently out in English, and it's written by Marvi Passanen. So yeah, it's kind of a traditional crafting book. Like if you look for knitting books or crochet books or that kind of thing, it has kind of the same structure. There's an introduction, there's like how to do the thing, how to start, the different stitches, that's separate. And then you get to how to do certain bits of like bits of mittens or bits of socks, and then into actual recipes for different items. And the recipes take up 2 whole pages like this, or more. So it's kind of a classic way to make handcraft books in my experience. So that's the one I've had and used for the last years. Now we come to the ones I've recently bought. So this is Nalbinding, What in the World Is That? Which has been one of the only English books on the market for a while. It is currently only available in black and white, which makes it a little bit difficult to use when it comes to instruction, because they've used a dark yarn, which makes it, or like a medium dark yarn, which can make it a little bit difficult to see. The main emphasis, like half of this book, is just the history and finds and that kind of thing. It also covers looping in addition to Nålbinding, so it's not completely like into Nålbinding. This is not Nålbinding, this is a type of looping. So it covers like what's the difference between those. But yeah, it's and then the end has some instruction and some inspiration. That's, for example, you can find these on Ravelry and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say this is a great way to learn necessarily, but it is a great way to get more information. Like here you have finds that are historical, and you can like, add to the knowledge you have of the craft, which is useful. So this, I would say, is a good sort of resource if you want to know more about the technique, but not necessarily as a beginner's guide. For that, I would probably go for videos. But yeah, I'm going to read this, especially the history part. I am looking forward to reading really closely and learning as much as I can. So, yeah. This one is more of an experimental look at Nålbinding. So, like, how does it work? It also covers looping, and has an index of the different stitches. The thing about this book is that it's both Danish on this side and English on this side. And the small samples I've seen, the translation isn't very good. So I'm Norwegian, I will read the Danish one, actually, because I was frustrated by the grammar issues and the spelling issues. But I mean, you can understand it, it's just not very easy to read. Yeah, this has history and sort of the technical specs, if you could say that, of Nalbinding. So it's much more of a what can we do, what can be done with this technique, and what has been done in history. And then there's some recipe kind of things, but they're not very step by step. It's very like it's coded. So this is also not necessarily a great thing for a beginner, like very beginner. This is probably an intermediate kind of thing. But yeah, it's good to know, like it's good for trying to tie Nålbinding into the modern era, and what can you do with it, what are the limitations, and yeah, that kind of thing. So that's Nalbinding by Marianne Øverby, or Overby. I'll link all these below. All the ones I can link to. Don't think I can link to this. I bought this in Husfliden, which is a handcraft shop here in Norway, and it has a short history. What was it? What is it? Like, what is it today? And then a short intro to the finished stitches with only one loop on the thumb. It doesn't go further than one loop on the thumb. So yeah, it has some tips. It has like, this is how big the needle should be. But yeah, it's a very short introduction, and I don't know if I would have understood this from these instructional drawings. So definitely go for a video if you can find one that speaks to you. Oh, I forgot to say, I think there's instructions for making the needle in both the previous ones. Making a needle from, for example, a popsicle stick. The last one that I bought recently is this one, Nalbinding by Randi Stoltz. It's by a Norwegian lady. It's only in Norwegian. It's just a floppy, thin thing, and it has introductory pictures. These are all in color, so that's good, but they're all made using white yarn, like nature colored yarn. So they can be a little bit hard to see against the white needle, as you can see here. So beware of that. But yeah, the pictures are pretty clear. The terminology is not like anything that's online. So not like anything, but it's not similar to anything that you find in English instructions. So if you learn using this, you will have to translate it into whatever else you're using to learn from as well. So just be aware of that if you choose to use this book. For example, it calls the Korgen and Mammen stitch to pluk, to pick, which is okay. It's fine. It's just a different name than anyone else. So yeah, the terminology is made for it's not made to be able to use across platforms and across pictures, across sources. It's made to teach, which I think you could use this as a course, especially if you have someone to ask, pretty well. So it has a lot of pictures with explanations all the way through, and then at the end there's a few things that it suggests you can make, like hand warmers and mittens with the exact number of stitches you need to increase and decrease, and then it's saying this should be fulled. So that's a good thing about this, like a really good thing about this what's it called, this booklet thing, is that it tells you how to fold this work, which is not very usual to find other places. People are generally, places I've looked say just try, and you'll figure out how it shrinks. Well, here it gives you exactly how big it should be before you full it, and how big it ends up being. So, and the same here. So mittens and different things like that. And then some history in the back here, but not much. Finally, there's a book that isn't just about Nålbinding, but has some Nålbinding in it. So it's this about mittens in Namdalen. Namdalen is actually the area I'm living in, so that's good. And an older woman who now sadly has died sat down and found out lots of things about, like, figured out Nålbinding before it was widely spread on the internet and in books. She wrote, like, she figured out how to do Nålbinding. She found some sources, and she wrote this instructional in her handwriting. So it's not super easy to understand for us modern people who aren't used to handwriting. It introduces everything you need to make thread. Here are the needles. And then it teaches a couple of stitches and sort of variations of how many stitches you pick up on the back. The diagrams are really not that great. But yeah, there are some examples of how you can use it. And then the rest is about decor. So like tablet woven things and bands and embroidery. So if you want to embroider your mittens, this is a great resource. It's all like all the traditional embroidery patterns. But for actually learning, I don't know how useful it would be. Here's a diagram of a mitten, how many stitches you add or take away. But yeah, I don't know if I would use this. I could try, but yeah. Here's some more decoration suggestions. And yeah. And then we go into other types of mittens and other techniques. It's a very short introduction in a book about mittens in general, but I found it fascinating that it was in a book about the local mittens in this area. So those are the Nålbinding books that I have so far. They all serve slightly different purposes, and for beginners, I think I would recommend either of these two. This one has served me as I've gone out of being a beginner and into being intermediately good, which I really like. The ideas here in the back are more, like, some of them are more difficult, so you can definitely progress in this book. This book is pretty basic, and you can get to a place where you can make hats and mittens and that kind of thing. But if you want to learn more, you would have to go online or search other places. So yeah, and for just more about the technique, I think I would recommend this book, or if you're interested in sort of the experimental aspects, this book, but just beware that the English is not great in this one. Okay, so that was it. Sorry, this video is rather long, but I found it interesting. I found it interesting how different approaches these books take. So I hope you found it remotely interesting as well, and maybe this has helped you in choosing what book to look for or buy for Nålbinding if you're looking for a Nålbinding book. Okay, that's it, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye!